Hey, Boy Manning here. Celtics lose their fourth game over their last six here at TD Garden to the Pacers. Split the mini-series, lose the season series to Indiana. We're powered by Prize Picks as well as the Game Time app. Noah Dalzell alongside for what I felt like was maybe their worst defensive performance of the year. You could look at a couple other games, but this being a layup line throughout, 60% shooting for the Pacers deep into the third quarter. And every time Boston pulled close, they did in the second quarter as well as in the second half. The Pacers got transition buckets. Joe Mazzulla noted that they outscored their transition number from Friday by halftime in this game. And didn't even hit too many threes here. They basically just ran a layup line past the Celtics defense right up until the final basket that made Joe Mazzulla pull the starters with about 2-3 minutes left here. Jaylen Brown sounding off on that defense after this game and saying some comfort has slipped in at this point in the season for the Celtics.
What kind of goes into the preparation for taking away those tendencies, and what's kind of gone wrong with that?
I think communicating, tendencies is one thing, but it's a lot different when you're out there and they're coming at you full speed, especially a team like Indiana. I think you got to be more alert and communicate to help each other. It seems like they got a lot of layups because we weren't recognizing where we can help from. They didn't shoot a lot of threes, so that means they shouldn't have got so many layups. We could have protected the basket a little bit better, and we didn't tonight. So I think we see it. I think recognizing, where we can be better at, and we build from here. We got a tough stretch coming in January, so we got time to hang our head. We just got to get up and be ready for that.
So I think we're all trying to figure out what's wrong with this defense. Communication, a big topic today. Clearly, Joe Mazzulla thinks that they're not paying close enough attention to tendencies here, and I think that all makes sense. I thought the best thing Jaylen said after the game was they probably could have helped more with the Pacers only taking 23 threes in this game. And 23, I think you could have helped like 8 to 10 more times at least in this game.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And honestly, there's a couple things at play. I mean, you are down two of your best defenders in Jrue Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis with their rim protection. But at the same time, we've talked about this a million times. This team's key last season was that they were able to overcome absences of key players. They were able to overcome, even multiple All-Stars being out, Tatum, Brown. And we're not seeing that same fight this season. It almost seems like when a guy's out, you can really feel their impact being, their absence being felt. And part of it is just going to be the human nature of the championship. I think there's a certain level of, stagnation, or like they did what they wanted to do. They're not coming off like angry like the way they did the previous season. But it's not just one performance anymore. This has been now a string of performances. It's been really the month of December where it just feels like a very different team with a very different identity than the one that we covered on the way to a championship last year.
And I thought the defensive turnaround last year was so important. And so that's a factor that's different this year. Injuries setting in. There's another game Kristaps Porzingis and Jrue Holiday missed. I've heard that their injuries aren't serious, but could miss some more time here before the road trip gets started. And that's going to be a bit of a make or break road trip for the Celtics here to start January. Jaylen stressed it in the locker room. The opponents speak for themselves. So that's going to tell us a lot about this team, but this stretch already showing more inconsistency for Boston. Are we at the point where we're already seeing that this isn't going to be the same year as last year or the same level of team, and it's going to be harder? It's going to be more stretches like this throughout their repeat attempt?
Yeah, I mean, I never thought they were going to have as good of a record as last season. I think they had a pretty spectacular, they were a historically dominant regular season team last year, and we know that. And so replicating that, I never was certain about. From the beginning, Brad Stevens and Joe Mazzulla told us this is not the same team. It might have the same people, but it's not the same team. And so, yes, it's a different group. It's the same group, but it's a different year. The question is, are they going to be able to turn it around and be good enough come playoff time? And I still feel like I don't feel discouraged to the point of saying like I can't imagine this team turning it around. They have one of the best records in the league. They're on pace for 59 wins. But if we see this road trip, if they can't step it up to another level and kind of fix some of these defensive slips, improve their individual defense, pay attention to tendencies, all these things, the communication, then we're going to be coming back here to Boston, and I'm going to start thinking that this is not really the same group that we we watched, break all those records last season during the season. And so it's Houston, it's Oklahoma City, it's Denver, it's Minnesota. It's 4 very good teams. They have the ability to being very good teams and can beat these. They could go 0-4 or they could go 4-0. And that'll tell us a lot about how they respond to this stretch here.
I'm concerned just because of some of the stuff we saw here in this game. You could tell they were trying to shoot their way to a win here. And they started 37% in the first half and then dipped to 22%. That's when the game started to fade away from them big time. So I think offensively they've had some drawbacks as well from last year. And that's another reason that they're not quite the same team effectively as last year. I think at one point their offensive rating was 3 points worse per 100 than that record-breaking group that we saw a year ago. So some challenges on that end of the floor too. I love when they went inside in this game, a couple big and ones in that spot, and then defensively they just couldn't stay in this game, couldn't get enough stops to complete a comeback. Do you think they need a meeting? I know we talked about that a little bit on the show there, if communication is a problem right now, and maybe emphasizing defense is something that they need to talk about more too.
Yeah, I'm not going to pretend to actually know how they're going to be able to, internally address the communication issues. What I will say is that this is a group of guys that have an enormous level of trust with one another. This is not a mosh posh of superstars that you don't really know how egos are going to be able to handle being called out. Like, I think there's a certain level of trust and respect that they all have for each other. And Derek White said post-game, this is going to make us stronger. So I have faith that Joe Mazzulla is going to know the right buttons to push, that the guys are going to be able to know how to hold each other accountable. That's really what separates this group from other teams that go through struggles, is you just don't know if there is that level of trust. When we talk about the Wolves with new additions and the Warriors with all their new pieces, there's just, you don't really know. I mean, Draymond Green talked about it the other night. He doesn't know what buttons to push in these guys. And so I think this team, the fact that they have this continuity, it's going to pay off now. They've overcome a lot of adversity together. Bigger deal issues like the 2023 conference finals, they've had to look in the mirror before. And so I don't know in what form it's going to take, but I do think that there's going to have to be a change, and we're going to notice it. And I felt like the other night was a good start, but it wasn't going to be enough to draw any conclusions. And I felt like if they had come back tonight and done the same thing, we would be able to talk about how they responded to Christmas Day. And instead, it went really in the other direction. Yeah,
and another difference over last year, they're falling further behind that 1 seed position in the East. Cleveland taking advantage of the Celtics' recent low here in December and building a 4-game lead in the East into this game here tonight. And the Celtics can't look too far ahead to that West Coast trip yet. Tuesday, they play Toronto here, a much healthier Raptors team than the one that pushed them pretty hard, shorthanded earlier this season. That's 3 o'clock, early start here for New Year's Eve, the final game of 2024 for the Celtics. So I'm sure we'll look back at some of the best and worst moments for the Celtics on that day. So stay tuned for that. Garden Report to come after with a post-game recap and everything else you expect over there. For Noah Dalzell, I'm Bobby Manning. Check out the recap over on CLNS Media and more of Noah's coverage at CelticsBlog.com. And we'll see you on Tuesday. Celtics lose to the Pacers 123-114.